You don't need to call us to say you're going to start. I need to, you need to provision a new warehouse, right? And it's going to take us a week to do that. No, it's, hey, we're going to start a new warehouse, get the configuration copied from that in the afternoon, be ready to start receiving this Monday.
Time of taping here, we're in the midst of kind of an emerging tariff war, which is creating a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty, ripples throughout all kinds of industries. So where do you guys, just give me your thoughts on kind of uncertainty in business in general, and how do you guys see where we're at today?
I mean, it's such a massive topic. I think when you think about, even the last 5 years, the pandemic and the switch, everything going, out e-commerce, direct to consumer, and, kind of coming back and leveling back. And there's like from one global shock to the next, it feels like the last few years. To me, the tariffs, they have a lot of people reevaluating and trying to figure out what it means, because there's still a massive amount of uncertainty of how it impacts. I met with a customer yesterday who ultimately was looking at where they were sourcing product and how it was going to flow based on everything they know right now. And for them, it was a minor impact. It was not something they were going to react to and say, oh, I'm going to try to move manufacturing or move product placement. So I think there's still a lot to be kind of learned, but it's going to be an impact for the next couple of years, 3 years. Any kind of shift you make in your manufacturing footprint or supply chain is not done in a couple of weeks. It's a big lead time effort, I think.
Yeah, no, I think if you look at the history of, creatures on Earth, the ones that are able to be nimble and agile are the ones that survive, right? You don't necessarily need to use that ability all the time, but when you're in the corner and the lion's facing you and you can get the hell out of Dodge, you can get the heck out of Dodge, that saves your life. So I think that in that way, being nimble, being agile as an organization, I mean, I had a customer come to us and said, hey, we need to potentially shift these DCs around because we want to be in the free trade zone, in South Texas or not, or whatever. Can we stand up a DC, in 2 weeks and start receiving? And because of the way our product's so agile around, you're taking, data from other DCs that they already have and say, I want to click. I want to move that in. I want to create it. I want to start receiving next week. I think that folks that are that agile can shift their approaches, can create DCs in potentially, in that South Texas area, or maybe they're saying, hey, I'm going to create a DC in Canada because I'm serving the Canadian market and I'm going to have stuff shipped there instead. For the Canadian market, I'm going to ship direct there. You can create a warehouse there. You can create a warehouse in the UK very quickly, right? So I think the folks that are more agile, again, you don't have to use the ability, but when facing a lion, I'd rather be quick on my feet rather than not, right? So that's the approach I always think of.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you bring up, which is that kind of network optimization and saying, if I'm importing product and now I can import it to Canada and then, serve the market directly as opposed to bringing it to the US and then up to Canada or something like that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that study happening right now. From what I know, the people that do supply chain network optimization, very busy looking around. I'm thinking we can keep tabs on things like leasing a new buildings, and our 3PL customers have a good viewpoint of what they're being asked for and where they're being asked, because a lot of end shippers will go to 3PLs and say, hey, how hard is it for you to set up a facility in Canada or Mexico or wherever I want to go? Yeah. So you're right. It's exactly about being agile, being able to grab all the process flows, move them quickly, and there's really not that big of a deal to set up a new facility.
One of our customers, actually, last week I was talking to them and they said, hey, how much time does it take if we tell you we're going to create a new, building someplace, how much time do you need for us, on your side, on your cloud side to do that. And I said, 0 time. You set up the building, you can, there's no additional time for us that it takes. So because our history is in 3PL, we've said this in couple previous sessions that we had, all that all that DNA comes forward with us and allows, you know, any business to operate much more nimbly and say, I'm going to create a new DC. I'm going to create a new warehouse someplace, and I can copy parts of configurations from sites that I know are working well and instantiate that in the matter of an afternoon, right? And be ready to receive in the next week once you get the integrations all set or the transportation stuff set, right? So having that ability to be nimble, you don't need to call us to say you're going to start. I need to, you need to provision a new warehouse, right? And it's going to take us a week to do that. No, it's, hey, we're going to start a new warehouse, get the configuration copied from that in the afternoon, be ready to start receiving next Monday.
Yeah. And you don't want to underplay it either, because ultimately, to whatever extent the tariffs really do impact and start to drive additional costs, I mean, the consumer, ultimately, that's got to flow downhill to consumer, right?
100% of the time, yeah.
So, um, if the tariffs are, if it's negotiation and it comes back to something reasonable, then I think life will continue pretty much as it's been continuing. If it turns into some massive amount of additional cost, the consumer's impacted. Buying will go down. Everything will start to quiesce. I don't see how you could avoid that, right?
Yeah, well, I think that's what's interesting is like if manufacturing, the whole idea theoretically is to shift some manufacturing back to the US. And for companies that want to do that, one of the nice things about our software, because of just the historical aspect of being around for 20 years, we've supported manufacturing sites and things like that with our stuff. So, there's no, additional thing that you have to worry about. If you're on our stuff, we can support manufacturing. We've got a long history of supporting manufacturing. Our new integration approaches support on-prem, hybrid, and a lot of the manufacturing folks, like on pack out side of things, the DCMs are like, yeah, I don't want something that is 100% in the cloud, because if somebody backhoes through that communication line, obviously there's better ways to do that. The support secondary communication now with cellular links, high-speed cellular links, but their concern is always like, hey, you know what, stuff is rolling off that manufacturing line, like we got to get it put away someplace, right? And so there's always this dilemma about how to do that. And so as those things happen, I think we have got good solutions that people can tap into. And I think it's all about having the right partner that can, from the perspective of where do we place things, how do we act as a company, regarding manufacturing, things like that. As long as you have a partner that's willing to have the conversations and able to technically, I think it's helpful, right?
I think it's going to be an interesting topic for our 2026 podcast series, assuming we do one, which will be, how much manufacturing has shifted, what's really happened,
Yeah, and that'll be
kind of what's been the impact, because it'll take multiple years, I think, to play out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, never a dull moment in the supply chain.
There's never a dull moment in supply chain. That is true.
No, it's interesting because, supply chain is really interesting because when economy's growing, we're really busy. When economy is shrinking, really, really busy, because there's a lot of consolidation of VCs. And what's the hardest part about when the economy does shrink is now you're putting different elements of operations in under one roof. When you consolidate, it's not always like to like. You're not you're not saying, okay, I only want my, wholesale stuff here. Sometimes you're saying, okay, it's wholesale building, the wholesale shrinking, so we're going to move some of the direct to consumer stuff in there. And so doing that is super hard, actually, because there's a lot of change management. But again, kind of having the abilities to say, from our 3PL world, we can run different elements of operations under the same roof really well, because you can have that wholesale side of the business, and you can almost set up the direct to consumer side as almost a little bit of a different business unit, have its own rules and things. So when we consolidate, I always say that's the hardest work that we do is when we have to consolidate VCs, because that's such a, difficult thing to have multiple, almost like different businesses under one roof for a lot of companies who aren't 3PLs.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yep. So I think our, you know, I think there's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, in the market, and the advice is, just you got to keep moving. You got to keep
be agile.
be agile and keep moving. Because if you sit around and wait for it to play out, it could be, this could go on for many months, and then you've lost a lot of opportunity, a lot of valuable time.